Yeah, dear colleagues, when the Slavs immigrated since the 7th century in the nowadays northeastern German and North Polish territory, they had in the beginnings a simple agrarian culture of low social economic complexity. Strongholds were at the beginning not built. You see here only some impressions. The area where I speak about, let's say West Pomerania, and also Cis Pomerania and Mecklenburg, Northern Brandenburg, this area. And you see here some pictures illustrating this early Slavic, in this area, Soko culture. Sometimes in the south, the more Prague type, this typical sunken huts and block buildings with quite simple ceramics and so on. You know this culture. But in the hinterland of the Baltic coast, we soon observe the integration of the Slavs in the Baltic sea trading network initiated by the Scandinavians. With the sea trading places, also here it's not necessary here to speak long about these places. All papers are dealing with it. You have here only some symbolic pictures, let's say again, on these places we all heard about already today and you also yesterday. With the sea trading places found since the 720s, we recognize a rapid economic development of the Slavic settlement territories in the coastal hinterland in all archaeological aspects. The economic upswing caused also an increase of social and political conditions. Large tribal organizations under the rule of powerful chieftains emerged. We hear about the rulers in written sources since the late 8th century. Most important is here the information on Charlemagne's campaign against the Wilts in the year 789, probably to down the Slavs allied with the Saxons. So this was not mainly a campaign to down or subject the Wiltian tribes, but they were in their contract with the Saxons, and so the Saxons were his main enemy, let's say. It was it is a sign that these people have become, and these rules have become important. And he personally, or the king personally, led this campaign. Nobody knows exactly where he went to, but probably if we follow the written sources, he went to Peene River in Cis Pomerania, and one of the strongholds which is searched for, that this could have been the target of his campaign, is this castle or stronghold of Vorwerk, what we see here in a aerial view by Fried Ruchel. Because this is mentioned in, this is very important also for this general structures we have here, that it is mentioned that Charlemagne came in this area and he attacked a Wiltian ruler. He was called Dragovit. He is called or mentioned as Rex. And this man subdued himself in front of his civitas. Civitas, we can assume this was a stronghold. Archaeological witnesses of these rules are large strongholds which have sometimes up to 400 or sometimes 500 meters in diameter, very strong fortifications of the so-called Feldberg type. Dozens of them were built since the middle of the 8th century, approximately in the wide hinterland of the Baltic. You see here again some examples for these strongholds. Very often they are built on mountains or hillocks, like you can see here. Quite strong wood and earth ramparts. Sometimes they have this stone fronts, as we see in this case. Water supply by leading ramparts in the valley in this case. yeah, a quite good, let's say, combination of natural and artificial fortifications, so quite complex strongholds. Yeah, you see here some photos from Rotemühl, one of the largest of these strongholds. Here also in such a LiDAR scan you can get an impression how large and how strong these strongholds have been. Here also Drense in the Uckermark, northern Brandenburg, gives you a good impression of these strongholds. Yeah, these mighty hill forts at their heyday in the 9th century, like the most sea trading places. The builders were Slavic tribal rulers, as this Dragovit, what we heard about, whom we heard about. We can assume a kind of complex chieftains which had developed obviously within only few decades. What kind of character, this is the question I deal with here, had the mutual relations between these rulers in the strongholds and the inhabitants of the trading places? For this question, firstly, it is important the spatial relationship between strongholds and emporia. Strongholds are never situated directly in the emporia, which are usually unfortified until the 10th century. As a rule, there is a distance of some kilometers between a sea trading place and the neighboring stronghold, and in all cases which I overlook, it is also like the situation that the emporia have a free way on a water to the sea, and there is not a stronghold between the coast and the emporium. Yeah, and this is of course strange, because of course it should be attractive for such a ruler to show his presence in such a place. Yeah, you see here only some, let's say, reconstructions or artists' impressions on the right hand of these emporia, and on the left of such strongholds where I speak about. Yeah, the sea trading places, we may deduce by this geographical situation, stood probably outside of the tribal organization based on the strongholds. This privilege was probably granted to them because the rulers, the tribal rulers, profited in the form of duties and general economic impulses from the existence of the emporia. Thus, the emporia were called ports of trade, privileged and accepted by the local rulers. Several scholars have used this term to describe this emporia. The relation of the Feldberg ring forts to the simultaneous sea trading places became clear above all in Menslin and the stronghold of Grüttow, what is about 6 kilometers southwest of the Emporium. You see here in this map by Hauke Jöns. Here's this center of the Emporium, also this settlement of Görke. Both sides of the river is this quite large Emporium agglomeration, and here is this stronghold. Yeah, what you also see here, you see not very much, but can see some crop marks of ditches what are here. Yeah, here I think you saw it already. These are these famous Viking graves what are excavated in Menslin. We saw it also in this presentation, some pictures before. And here this quite interesting, let's say, Scandinavic style stone paved way what is going through the valley of the river Peene. Several dirham and numerous Frankish imports found in Grüttow, in the stronghold, are probably the results of contributions and commercial relations between the chiefs in the strongholds and the inhabitants of the sea trading places. Also in Badi, or Badi Svilubie, we already heard about today, from this place more to the east in Western Pomerania. It's the Placenta or Placente river, not far away from Kołobrzeg. Also there, where a graveyard on the fields of Svilubie produced the funerals of Scandinavian women. You see here two examples from one grave. Really in the, let's say, usual dress code of Scandinavian women, they were found there in such a grave. So this looks really like women who felt or showed, felt themselves Scandinavian, let's say. Yeah, there also we can recognize such relations. The graves might indicate less that from my opinion, might indicate less that in Badi existed a kind of stronghold trading place with Scandinavian inhabitants, as for example Slav Woszyński assumed, as more that Scandinavians from a nearby emporium, perhaps it was in Kołobrzeg in Buczystowo, where later was a quite important castle town, married men of the Slavic tribal elite in the stronghold. In many other Feldberg strongholds have been found northern or western elitist trade goods, probably conveyed via the emporia, and illustrating not only the contacts between traders and rulers, but also the benefit the rulers had by accepting and promoting the trading places. You could show here many material culture found on these strongholds. You see here, mainly Scandinavian, also some Western material found on strongholds in Potsdam, Oldenburg. Some finds quite new this year from Potsdam. You see it's still not restored. These objects, also such combs which you find in strongholds. They are for sure from emporia, not in trade good. They are really produced in emporia because in the south of the Baltic in the 8th, 9th century, the only places where have been comp making have been these emporia. So it's quite clear that it comes from these places. To understand the context between traders and rulers, we have secondly to focus on the, let's say, dark side of these contexts. This means slavery and slave trade. That these branches were important for the early medieval Northwest Slavic territory reveal historical sources and research. Main customers were in the Islamic world. The routes went by Western Europe to Spain and by the Kievan routes in the east. Yeah, here only because this is now more important, the eastern route here going to Byzantium. But of course, via Staraya Ladoga, of course, the main markets or the meeting points between the Orient and the Varangians haven't been in Constantinople, but more in these trading places like Shakel, Itil, and Volga, which have what is it today Ukraine, southern Russia. However, the archaeological proof for this trade is difficult. It is hardly impossible, but it is hardly possible to identify, not possible to identify man as a commodity. It is to hypothesize, you understand the word, that emporia were slave markets and slave harbors as nodal points of the Baltic trade and communication network. However, just these places offer no certain evidence for the Slavic trade, with one exception. In and around these places, Arab silver dirham are found over and over again. Yeah, you see here on the left, this is the new find from Stolpe near Oder. Some hack silver with dirham, mainly quite late coins, but it is not numismatic research in the moment, or it's in progress. And you see on the right, such a reconstruction of from such a colleague working in reenactment with all these things, with original coins also from this historical hoard, what is here to see. Yeah, these Arab silver diams, they are really concentrated, they have clusters around these empori. And therefore it's also Truso, of course, a very good example. It is one of the plausible assumptions of research that the enormous amounts of Oriental silver known from the Baltic was a gift mainly for slaves. Yeah, that is globalization, what we speak here about, that therefore the slave trade was very important. The lots of dirham as a sign of extensive slave trade form a more acherontic background for the interpretation of described social and economic developments, which we recognize archaeologically. With the emergence of the sea trading places, the building of strongholds, and the increasing complexity of the political organization of the Northwest Slavic societies in the 8th, 9th century. We can say in the result it is very impressive. It was really an increase, early heyday of economy and of social aspects in the Slavic areas in the hinterland of the Baltic coast. But the background was perhaps more such a slave trade and such things. Yeah, let's look on this point a little more detailed. That the Slavic strongholds have to be understood before the background of warlike times show already the written sources, especially since the 10th century. We hear about campaigns of Frankish troops, but also Slavic fights and war activity with very brutal style, with many dead people and so on. Terror used as some, let's say, political instrument. And archaeological findings prove that these strongholds arose from an atmosphere of war and violence, as fire debris on nearly all excavated strongholds. Nearly all of these fortifications have been destroyed by fire, sometimes quite often in their history. But there are also, and very often also, weapons. We saw already today from Arkona, there's many things from these arrowheads, more than 300 in the moment. And for Arkona, we have also these written sources, about these fights there. But we have also human skeletal remains discovered at many strongholds. And the more excavations we have from these strongholds, the more such relics come. To daylight, Arkona we saw already today. Here we have some examples from Lower Silesia, a little more south of the Baltic hinterland. But still, some of the most impressive objects, perhaps the most impressive from my point of view, is this pre-war excavations on the Gostin strongholds, where several dead people corpses have been found in the destroyed houses, under the this wooden planks today burned. And so it looks here like that this group, people which were attacked in the stronghold, they have been, this whole group have been massacred in such a way that there was nobody left to bury the dead people afterwards. Another example, Klinica, this is both from second half of 9th century to 10th century, let's say. Also here in Klinica, not far away, such a skull of a girl or a young woman. This looks like a more religious background, perhaps. It is buried under the rampart. But of course, this is the same, let's say, cruel idea if such a religion uses such practices. And this is also a new find from Stolpe, a little later, from 12th century, Luthischen area. Here, this is really a girl, from in a normal standard burial from a cemetery. And this girl, from 2 or 3 years old, it has such an arrowhead in the back of the head. So this was really running away, this girl, and it was shot in the head. So quite, you see here also this CT, quite impressing burial for this things I speak about here. Yeah, these relics, of course, attest partly, probably foreign attacks from, for example, the Luthicians. This is probably one of the Christian neighbors. It could be Polish, could be German, could be Danish. It's all possible. In the earlier times, of course, Eastern Frankish attackers in their expansion in this territories, Slavic territories east of Elblągu and Saale River. But above all, they give evidence for heavy conflicts between the Slavic chieftains controlling as a kind of warlords the tribal areas, competing to each other and using the ring force as seats and instruments of power. These combats between Slavic rulers were not only cruel, as it is characteristic for fights in simply structured tribal systems, as we can see also today. Several observations suggest that in particular the possibility of enslavement heated up the competitions. The increasing use of metal detector in the last years delivered often dirham from strongholds in the Baltic hinterland, testifying that the rulers were involved in silver trade. Moreover, big treasures appear beyond the sea trading places. You see here on the left still perhaps most impressive of these finds. From Rijkswijk, the large picture, and then here this is a new find from Michael Schirren and Fred Hochhof, not far away from Menslin, that you have here such a typical dirham hoard with some hex silver with it combined. And there are on the other hand, from the strongholds, there are also more and more dirham found in the last years. Very interesting is in this for this topic, the stronghold of Potslo in the Uckermark. This was the seat of an Ukrainian ruler. The Ukrainians, this was a tribe sitting west of the Oder. I forgot a map, but it is not. So let's say 100 kilometers from the Baltic, from the Udermove area, and perhaps 40 kilometers a little farther southwest of Szczecin, to orient you. And there sit the Ukrainians, giving their name to the area until today. It's called Uckermark, this area. There's a very large stronghold which Joachim Henning and me investigated during the last years. The excavations delivered not only human bone fragments of about 30 individuals who bear testimony to murderous conflicts or massacres in the stronghold, but also Arab silver which reached Potslo by trade from the Scandinavian Slavic sea trading places at the Baltic. This means more than 100 kilometers to the distance, 100 kilometer distance to the coast. If you go more to the south in Brandenburg, it becomes less and less that we know this dirham, and let's say on the height of today Berlin, it is not common to find dirham. So we are here in the southwest area of this economic trade zone. Victims of violence with silver indicate that the silver was paid for slaves whom the chieftains captured in military conflicts with neighboring groups and sold to the Scandinavians in the sea trade places. above all young women and children, as we know from written sources. The men were, or the older men were usually beaten to death. That, of course, is charm, not only to throw down the unbeloved neighbor, but also to convert him into cash. Yeah, you see here only some pictures, quite really interesting place. This Potsdam is today absolutely not to see. It's like in Truso, if you are there, only a large field. But you can see here it was only found, detected in the year 2000 in this aerial view, that here is on this hillock between some lakes, quite large drop marks of a concentric stronghold. You see here the geomagnetic, quite large, something like 360 to 400 meters, main castle, forecastle, or outer bailey. This is from 8th to 10th century, the stronghold. It was very dense, settled, very strong fortified ditches from 4 meters depth, because it was not water ditches. Especially here in the main castle, there are many relics of houses and so on. You see here quite beautiful, kind of sunken hut, not very sunken, with some storage pits and such a fireplace. Here some millstones and so on. Many militaria we have in this stronghold, I think 6 or 7 such, spurs with this Haken, you know it. This very interesting is in the outer bailey. This for Feldberg stronghold is quite characteristic type of sunken hut of quite impressive dimensions. Let's say settled. It looks more like a ditch. This is here something like 40 meters in the length, but it was settled. You have all the time such fireplaces inside. We know it from several such castles from the 8th century on, and it's mainly in this type of stronghold. Nobody knows exactly how it was to reconstruct, but we made here this idea, let's say, that it could have been looked like this. Quite. You can think about what was the use. It looks like a barrack for some warriors or something like that. And here you see this objects which give here evidence, or let's say some indication for this cruel times, and also for this slave trade. So really many of these relics of men, of skeletons, and here is one quite interesting, really such a irregular burial of only a head. It is C14 dated around 900, so it is for sure from this time. But the normal is that we find these relics of men in the settlement layers, and in the cultural layers, and in the pits, and so on. This is, for example, in this long sunken hut, what I showed you. There is then such a mandible laying inside, and these are all the time. These are parts of the head, or of the mandible, of the extremities, or so. So it looks really like that here are the things left which are not found when somebody cleared the area after a massacre. This is quite typical also for battlefields. There you find also really these parts which are not found when somebody buried them. Something like 20 become more and more, because all the time then the detectorists they are walking there. And so it's all the time hard to say what is the real number, but when I stopped to count, these were something like 20 of this dirham. You see several types. They are from 8th to 10th century. They are already numismatic by Lutz Elisch. He defined them. coming from Baghdad and Isfahan and so on, and the latest is from middle of 10th century, what is quite late, and also you find here such a very typical co-worker, either weight underlining this connection to the north, but what is quite clear. And I think if I find this combination of skeletons and cruelty, and also these coins where it is there's nearly no alternative. What could have been attractive to bring 100 kilometers to the north instead of slaves or men? I think this is we are quite near at a proof of slavery, but of course the last step is a hypothesis.
Time, please.
Yes, I'm nearly there. With such observations, we can reconstruct the following model. Here you see only some archaeological evidence and some reconstructions of Slavic wars. The Slavic rules developed in mutual warlike competitions, and the option or threat of the slavery attained a particular importance. Far distance trade was presumably organized mainly by Scandinavians and took place in the sea trading places. The new finds of Biermann and wide dispersion in the northern Slavic lands, particularly in the Feldberg stronghold, suggest that the Slavic people were involved in the slave hunts even as actors. The last picture only some impression. Already the formation of the first tribal rules following the sea trading places, and at the same time with the first influx of Oriental silver, was the result of slave hunts and competitions for power by chieftains struggling each other. Certainly stimulated the threat to become caught, enslaved, and sold, the establishment and stabilization of the military and social organization of the northwestern Slavs. Because this hazard enforced a military organization and a coalescence around a leader. This leader could prove himself by successful defense and win personal charisma as a base for successful reading. Thus, the slave market at the Baltic coast was the other side of the coin of relations between the traders in the emporia and the rulers in the strongholds. But also this stimulated the social and political development in the northern West Slavic lands. Thank you very much.